Hello BookTube, hello friends, welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and in this video I'd like to do another installment in my Newbery project. Now I have had a goal to read all of the Newbery winners for several years now. I got inspired because one of my co-workers said that she read them from the time she was in middle school up until early adulthood. I met her about 30 years ago, and at that point, she had read all of them. I think since then, she has not continued to read them, but still, I was inspired by that. And I thought, what a great idea, because I remember as a young child, my first time at the library on my own, the librarian showed me the big poster that had all the Newbery winners, and at the time I read Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which is one of the winners from 1970, and I've been intrigued by that award ever since. So, meanwhile, 45 years later, here I am. I'm 55 years old, and I love to read middle grade books. And I want to tell you about the middle grade winners, I want to tell you about the Newbery winners of the 1980s. Now, this is the second installment of this series. A few weeks ago, I did one on the Newbery winners of the 1990s, and at that point, I explained what the Newbery winners are, or what the Newbery Award is. So if you'd like to refer back to that video, or just Google John Newbery Medal. By the way, if you Google it, Newbery is only spelled with one R. So feel free to Google that, and it's basically an American award for the most distinguished contribution to children's literature from the previous year. And we're almost to the 100th year of the Newbery winner, and I have a goal to finish reading all of the Newbery winners by the time, or at least within the year next year, when they announce that 100th winner. The first winner was announced in 1922. So that means in 2021, there'll be 100 Newbery winners. So for this video, I want to focus on the 10 winners from the 1980s. And I have them here displayed behind me. I'm going to show them to you one at a time and tell you a little bit about what I can remember about them. A few of them I have reread recently. A couple of them I should reread, but I want to go ahead and get this video done. I can tell you enough about it to maybe pique your interest or not. So let's just get started. The first book from 1980 is A Gathering of Days by Joan Bloss. I don't think I read this back several years ago when I really put a big dent in the list and got a lot of these read. I just read this on audio at the beginning of June, and I really enjoyed it. I actually listened to it on audio, and I haven't really flipped through the book, but as I suspected, it is written in diary entries. And so it is about a young girl. I want to say she is from New England. Let me read the cover here. It is a New England girl's journal from 1830 to 1832. And I thought it was very good. There is some, well, I'm trying to say, the thing that she's trying to decide is there is someone in need of help, and I think they are a runaway slave from the South, and she really wants to help them as well as some of the other young people, but of course it's against the law for them to aid runaway slaves. So she's struggling with what's right and wrong, and it's just an introduction into what the people in the North were going through as the country was coming to terms with the fact that slavery was wrong. What can we do about it? That kind of thing. And it's told in a very simple format, so it is perfect for a young reader. And I think it's a really good introduction to that time period and that part of the country, and I would recommend it. The next one is a little deceptive by the title. You might think that it is a love story, but it's actually not. Let me get this set up here. There we go. This one is called Jacob Have I Loved. It's by Catherine Patterson, and this is the 1981 winner. And this is a Jacob and Esau retelling. If you're not familiar with Jacob and Esau, they are two brothers from the Bible. And the older brother would normally be the one who would receive the birthright and the inheritance from their father. But Jacob, being the younger brother, was the favored one by his mother. And basically they tricked Esau into giving up his birthright. So in this book, we have the younger sister, I believe, who is the favored one by everyone. And the older sister has to deal with that and the anger that creates, the friction that causes in her family. And I don't remember a lot of the details about it, but I do remember that this is a Jacob and Esau story. It's a story of sisters where one has to really struggle for everything she gets, and the other one seems to have everything handed to her. And then let me pause for a second. This one is oversized, and I had it kind of stuck back in there. I was afraid everything was going to fall when I went to get it out. I need to reread this one, but I read this several years ago. This is a book of poetry, and it is called A Visit to William Blake's Inn, Poems for Innocent and Experienced Travelers by Nancy Willard. Now, I haven't had a chance to reread this yet. This is a library copy. I was just flipping through it earlier, but what I did do at the beginning of June in preparation for this video, I checked out an abridged version of some selected poems by William Blake so that I could just get a feeling for the type of poetry that William Blake wrote. And this book, honestly, I'm not a good judge of poetry at all. And so I don't really know what, I listened to it on audio and I don't really know what I heard. It was interesting, but I'm just not into poetry. But this is very fanciful. It is whimsical. It, I believe, is supposed to be as if you had visited an inn that was run by William Blake. So there are characters and things from his poetry. And so if you know something about William Blake, then you might find this interesting. And really, even if you don't know anything about William Blake, the poems are fun and the illustrations are fun. Here's a bear and some other animals there. Anyway, it's not something I would have chosen for a Newbery winner, but it's good every once in a while to throw some poetry in there. And I have to say, whoever was on the committee in the 1980s, I think really did like poetry, because this is not the only poetry book that was chosen as a winner in the 1980s. The next winner is a book called Dicey's Song by Cynthia Voigt. Now, in the 1980s, there were two different books that were selected as Newbery winners that were second in their series, and this is one of them. And in this case, I would recommend reading the first book first. It's called The Homecoming. This is a delightful series, and I didn't even realize when I first read these that there are 7 books in the series. And I was thinking that The Homecoming was a Newbery winner or a Newbery honor book, but I'm looking at the list today and I'm not seeing it there. But I would still recommend reading this first. It's a story about some children whose mother basically abandoned them, and they have to make their way to their grandmothers. So I won't tell you how that all comes out because I don't want to spoil this book. You could read this one without reading the other one if that's all you're going to read, but they're such good books that I would highly recommend this. Now, this cover isn't much to look at. I was just saying when I was doing a different video the other day, and I was talking, I guess it was my July TBR, and I was saying how if I could find a nice hardcover version of this that looks like this, then I would snatch it up in a heartbeat. And I just realized today that this book is signed by the author. So that's awesome. And then the third book in the series is actually a Newbery Honor book for the next year. and it is A Solitary Blue. So what I decided to do, because I've been looking at these and just reminiscing about reading these first two books several years ago, I decided that I am going to reread these or re-listen to these this month in July. So I have this one checked out from the library on CD, and I'm going to listen to that on the way to North Carolina. We are getting ready to leave on Saturday to go on a church trip. I am driving my own car, so I'll be able to listen to audiobooks. And then I'm going to check out these two on Scribd. And I am super excited about that. So as far as the years go, I get going and I lose track of what year I'm on. I believe that, yes, this is the 1983 medal winner. And then A Solitary Blue is the one of the 1984 honor books. And speaking of honor books, I will show you a handful of the honor books that I either have read or have on my shelves. The honor books for 1983 include The Blue Sword by Robin McKinley. I read that just a month or two ago. That is the first book in the Hero in the Crown, well, in the DeMar series, which is coming up here. It's on the list. Let me just skip ahead a year. This is the winner for 1985. This is a fantasy series. It's really a duology plus some short stories. So its first book, The Blue Sword, was an honor book, but not a winner. And then the second book was a winner. And you could honestly read these in either order. It really would not matter. This one is a prequel, and it doesn't give any spoilers for the other one. The other one makes mention of the characters in this book, but even though it's technically number one, and this is a prequel, you could read them in any order. I liked The Blue Sword better than this one, but if you want to read Newbery Winners and you don't have a lot of time, you can just pick this one up. But like I said, in the other situation where there's a second book that's the winner, I would read this one and not skip over to Dicey Song until you read The Homecoming. Okay, now I'm getting myself all jumbled up. But while we are on the subject of honor books, also for 1984, we had Solitary Blue was an honor book. That's that one. And also The Sign of the Beaver. I just listened to this recently, and I really enjoyed it. This is a story about a 12-year-old boy, and him and his father have just finished building a cabin for themselves in Maine. And the father leaves the son there to mind things at the cabin, and he goes back to the city to pick up the mother and younger sister. So it's the story of what the boy experiences while he's there alone in this remote part of Maine, and I thought it was very, very good. I really enjoyed it. And then moving on up then to 1984, the winner is Dear Mr. Henshaw. This is delightful. This is a story about a boy. This is epistolary. So a boy named Lee Botts is writing letters to an author. It's an assignment from his teacher, and it's supposed to help with their writing, and they're supposed to write to authors. And I'm sure that this author he's writing to is a fictitious author. I have read another book where a kid is writing to an author, and it's Walter D. Myers, who is an actual author, and I can't even remember what book that is. But this one is by Beverly Cleary, and it's really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I listened to this on audio several years ago. I haven't reread it recently, but I remember really loving it. The 1986 winner is just a tiny little book, and it's fantastic. This is Sarah Plain and Tall by Patricia McLaughlin. It's the first in a trilogy, and they made a movie of each of the books. And I remember seeing some of the bonus features of that movie, and they were talking about how they were able to get a whole movie out of such a small book, and I think they did a fantastic job. Glenn Close plays Sarah, and this was one of my mother's favorites. All three books in the trilogy are fantastic. The movies are fantastic. I would highly, highly recommend them. It's about a woman who's living with her brother and his wife and family, and she's starting to feel like a third wheel. She wants to make a life for herself, so she answers an ad that has been placed by a widower who has 2 young children, and she decides to go there and become his wife. And it is just a wonderful, wonderful story. I would highly recommend it. Hi, it's me from the future. I'm going to interrupt myself here because I filmed most of this video about 2 weeks ago before our trip to North Carolina. We have since gone to North Carolina and are back, and I've been trying to edit this video and put together the pieces, and I realized that some footage is missing. I filmed a segment about the Newbery winner of 1987, which is my favorite Newbery winner of the 80s, and that footage is not there. So I'm going to cut in here and tell you about The Whipping Boy by Sid Fleischman. This book is delightful. Now, when you first look at the premise, you think, what? That doesn't seem right. And it's true. Having to whip a boy who is completely innocent and take the punishment for a prince who is a brat just because he's a prince and is not allowed to be punished seems very wrong. But that's the premise of this book, and it is wonderful. I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. It is so good. I have read this multiple times to elementary students. It's such a fun book to be able to do the voices and to play along, and it's delightful. I highly recommend it. It's not long at all, and if you pick any book to read from this era that I'm showing you in this video, this is the one. It is super fantastic. So now I'll go back to the footage that I filmed previously, and I will come back at the end and do a new sign off, and I will talk to you soon. The Newbery winner from 1988 is a nonfiction book. There aren't a lot of nonfiction winners of the Newbery Medal. There are probably several more honor books that are nonfiction than there are actual winners. But the very, very first Newbery winner was given to, or the first Newbery Medal was given to a nonfiction book. But in 1988, this book was chosen to be the Newbery Medal winner, and I think it is really, really good. I read this several years ago. This is a photobiography of Abraham Lincoln by Russell Friedman, and the photos are so good. There are some other illustrations, and it's just the perfect mix of photography and text that it keeps it interesting. It's not boring at all. I think kids would probably have a hard time with a biography of this length if it weren't for the pictures. But I just think it's very well done, very deserving of the medal, and I really did enjoy it. Probably more than any other thing that I have read about Abraham Lincoln. And the Newbery winner from 1989 is another poetry book. This is called Joyous Noise by Paul Fleischman. Paul Fleischman is the son of Sid Fleischman, who wrote The Whipping Boy. And this is a lot of fun. The theme of this set of poems is insects. And it's written for 2 voices. So I think it would be really fun to, to read this with another person, because there's parts where you're reading along together, or maybe you're saying different things, or maybe like this person starts out and the other person continues on. It's just like that throughout the whole book, and it's such a unique concept. And I think that this author may have one other collection of poems that are written for 2 voices. So this is a lot of fun. And even though I said I'm not really into poetry, something like this that's very unique, I can read and enjoy. So the other thing I wanted to do before I go is mention a couple more of the honor books. Now, I was thinking I would go along each year and I would tell you about a few of the honor books that I have on my shelves, and then I let that get away from me. But I did mention the first few that I have on my shelves. In 1985, one of the honor books is a book about a cat. I have it on my shelves, but I have not read it. It's called One-Eyed Cat by Paula Fox. I believe Paula Fox also wrote The Slave Dancer, which is a Newbery winner from probably the 70s. I have read it. It's really good, but I have not read this. So oh yes, it does say by the author of The Slave Dancer. So you'll hear more about her in the next installment of my Newbery videos. But this looks good, and I'm excited that I have it, even though I haven't read it. And then I have 3 more that are all by the same author. I don't think Gary Paulsen has ever won the Newbery Medal, which is a shame because he's a fantastic writer. I have 3 books here that are all honor books, and they are all from different years. From 1986, I have Dog Song. I have not read this one, but I hope to get to it one of these days. And then from 1988, I have read this, and it's a favorite, Hatchet. This is probably his most popular book. It is the first in a series, and the series is fantastic. It's about a boy who is, well, I don't even want to tell you. It's a survival story. Let me just say that. And I think it's really, really good. So I would highly recommend it. And then this one is actually from 1990. So it doesn't count as a 1980 Newbery honor book, but it was published in 1989. And it was an honor book in 1990. And I did not have a copy of it until just a couple weeks ago when we were out thrift shopping, and I ran across it, and I thought, oh, that's that Gary Paulsen book that I don't have, because I have probably 20 of his books. He was a very prolific writer, and I ran across this at a thrift store, and I remembered when I was looking up all the Newbery books from the 90s that I thought, I surely had this on my shelf because I have so many other Gary Paulsen books, and I didn't have it. So now I do. It's called The Winter Room, and I don't know anything about it other than the title and that it's by an amazing author. In 1983, there was a lot of competition. Not only was Dicey Song the winner, and as I've mentioned, it was amazing. Then The Blue Sword was one of the honor books. I really liked it, even better than Here on the Crown. There were 4 others. 3 of them I have not ever read or I don't own. But the other one is a book that I did have on my shelves, and so I read it just recently. It's Graven Images by Paul Fleischman. Paul Fleischman is the son of Sid Fleischman, who is a Newbery-winning author, and I will be telling you about his book in a little bit. It is my favorite for this decade of the 80s, but this one was okay. The stories were kind of mysterious, a little bit creepy, but I felt like it wasn't creepy enough for people who really want a creepy book, and it wasn't mysterious enough to really be good mysteries. It's 3 short stories in this one book. It was fun, and it was a little bit mysterious and a little bit creepy, but just kind of middle of the road. I didn't love it, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. And that is about all that I want to show you in this video. My apologies for the choppiness of the editing of this video, as well as for getting things out of order. I had to film this in a hurry before we left on our trip for North Carolina. I didn't have time to edit it then, and I didn't realize at the time that I was missing a couple of parts and that things had kind of gotten out of order. And so now we're back, and I'm trying to piece this together and realizing that it is a mess. But anyway, I've already returned about half of these books back to the library, and I just didn't want to have to refilm anything that I didn't have to. So I just wanted to come back on here and apologize for the choppiness of the editing. And that is about all for this video. I have shown you all of the Newbery winners of the 1980s, as well as a few of the honor books that I have read, as well as a few more that are on my shelves that I have not read. There are quite a few more, and at some point when I ever get done with reading all of the winners, I might go back and make it a goal to read all of the honor books, and at that point maybe I will share those with you in the form of another video series. We shall see. But for now, the main focus is to show you the Newbery winners. I will probably come back next with the Newbery winners of the 1970s. I think I still need to read 1 or 2 of those. Incidentally, I made an error early in this video when I mentioned that I had read the Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, and I said it was a Newbery winner of 1970. I meant to say it was of the 1970s. I believe it is the winner from 1972 specifically, so my apologies for that as well. So that's all for this video. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. Let me know if you have read any of these Newbery winners from the 80s, or which ones look the best to you, and what you're most interested in, if any at all. So that's all for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.